row. So we should have Cyrus Reed, Paul Hodson, Julia Mickenberg, Tamara Colbert, and Jody Quimby on the on-deck circle. With that, Chair recognizes Mr. Weinberg. If you would, state your name, whom you represent, and you have 2 minutes, sir.
Sure thing. Thank you, Chairman Birdwell and members of the committee. My name is David Weinberg. I'm here today representing the Brennan Center for Justice, opposing Senate Bill 1. I'm going to start where I started back in March on Senate Bill 7. I've never met the man, so I sort of want to apologize. Maybe we can grab coffee soon. But I wanted to push back on a couple of things that Mr. DeVore said in his testimony. First of all, he made, again, this analogy of voter fraud to people who speed. And I was doing a little internet research. I hope this is correct, but I was able to find that in the year 2014, Texas police handed out 688,000 speeding tickets in the state of Texas. Now, you compare that number to under 50 active cases of voter fraud, and I'm not sure that is a really great analogy by the numbers. So just to put things in perspective, I guess my other issue is he said, quote, "It's all about resources." Well, I look at Senate Bill 1 and I do not see an appropriations bill. This does not seem to be a bill that is adding resources to the Attorney General's office. This is a policy bill. And what it is, as others have mentioned, is something I've heard a lot from folks who are sort of pushing this legislation is they want something that makes it, quote, easier to vote and harder to cheat. This is not a bill that makes it easier to vote in any way, shape, or form. Senate Bill 1 would, among other measures, ban drive-through voting, 24-hour voting, curbside voting. It would make it more difficult for voters with disabilities and language access needs to receive assistance. It would prohibit election officials from sending mail ballot applications to eligible voters. It would require mail ballot applications to be hand-signed and to include ID information. It'd make it harder for election officials and election judges to protect voters from poll watcher harassment. It would expand discriminatory voter roll purges. It would also create a vague criminal penalty against vote harvesting that could capture ordinary interactions between campaigns and voters. So I want to make it very clear, what we are doing today with this legislation is by no means making it easier to vote. We are cutting off access to voting for Texans in a state that, as many of others have mentioned, is already in a lot of ways the most arduous state to vote in the country. So I would strongly I would strongly support this committee to reject this legislation, which we find to be misguided and based on falsehoods about voting that really should be left in the past. Thank you very much.
Members, questions for members of the audience? Please, no outbursts. Thank you. Members, questions for Mr. Weinberg?
Mr. Weinberg, you mentioned this briefly, but could you speak to how you feel like the imposition of civil and criminal penalties, potential penalties on poll workers will impact our ability to attract folks to do those jobs?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to talk about that, and thank you for the question. So again, I think from the chairman, Chairman Hughes, we heard earlier today a concern that if we required training for poll watchers, that would be a disincentive. That's extra work. I don't want to go through the rigmarole of having to do that to be a poll watcher. And that seems to be, and this has gotten some national press recently, and I certainly the Brennan organization has looked at this. I think that's a valid concern. And how you attract poll workers and election judges when you're now holding a specter of various new criminal penalties above their heads in a state where we're already having a difficult time in a lot of counties adequately staffing our elections is a real problem. And some of the measures in this bill are just like nonsensical in terms of, okay, how in the world is an election judge supposed to operate their polling place? There's language that says a poll watcher can be removed, but for they have to do something that was seen by someone, by the election judge. So if they didn't see it, their misconduct was okay. And they also get this like get out of jail free card. They also, it can't be their first time that they were warned, please do not harass the voters. It has to be the second time they were seen doing this. So I think beyond the criminal penalties, there's also this cloud of confusion that people are going to have to operate under. And it's like, how in the world am I supposed to do my job and not run the risk of prosecution? So I think, people talk about this bill cutting off a lot of ways for voters to vote. And I think that it also creates a raft of problems for election workers as well.
Great, thank you.
Members, any other questions?